Welcome to our Meet the Experts Casting Directors panel. We are joined today by Cami Patton from As We See It, Skye Topic from The Challenge, Margery Simkin from Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Aisha Bywaters from We Are Lady Parts, and Libby Goldstein and Junie Lowry-Johnson from Yellowjackets. Thank you all for being here. I want to start by asking, how did each of you get into casting? Because I don't know if that's a very common or popular career path. Cami, let's start with you.
Wasn't that common when I started. Hopefully it's becoming more common now. It was a long time ago. Oddly, I was pre-med, but my sister was an actress, and I followed her around on interviews, and I always knew everybody that was there, and she was like, oh, you should think about casting. And my first boss was a registered nurse, Eileen Knight, who it was just very interesting. We both really loved the study of medicine, but didn't really want to practice. And it just ended up being a natural fit. My father was a doctor. My mother was very involved in theater.
Oh, pre-med to casting. That's
yeah, as you do.
Aisha, how about you?
I first got involved in casting. Well, my mum was an actress when I was young. She was in the Royal Shakespeare Company. We lived in Stratford-upon-Avon for a year. So I always sort of grew up around the industry. But after I finished university, I sort of worked for a theatre company in London called Tamasha Theatre Company. And while I was there, I helped the director cast a play, and was like, it suddenly all made sense. So from there, I sort of just interned for about 3 years with different casting directors. And then finally, someone was looking for a full-time assistant, and that's how I probably got into casting.
Margie, what about you?
Oh, I'm the outlier. I had no idea what it was. I was working various odd jobs around, and a friend of mine had been looking for kids for oddly to play the younger versions of kids in a movie. And she really wanted to be a writer. And so she called me in a panic and said, go in, lie, and tell them you've been working with me. And because I need to take this other job and I don't want to leave them in the lurch. And I did it. And, like Cami, I mean, suddenly it just, wait, I'm good at this. I don't really quite get what this is, but I'm good at it. And it was a different time, and I actually never worked for anybody else. And people started trusting me and letting me do stuff, and I tripped into it, and very grateful.
It sounds from what I've gathered, sounds very instinctual once you get into it. So Skye, what about you?
Yeah, I started sort of as an assistant. I was an assistant for RJ Cutler, and then for John Murray at Murray, obviously the production company who makes The Challenge. And the good thing about that was I sort of, from that desk, could see all the departments. So I could I'd watch all the meetings, I'd roll all the calls, and I could work out where it makes sense for me. And it was definitely story and casting. So I've sort of managed to get myself into a position where I cast The Challenge and then I run the story in the field. So that's just a perfect mix for me, because I get to choose amazing talent that I think are going to make a great show, and then sort of see that through in the production process. But those few years I was on John Murray's desk at Murray was just the perfect place for me to work, make money, and just watch all the departments and see what makes sense for me. I'm definitely not an editor, I'm not business and legal, who am I? And that's sort of how I got there.
Awesome. Libby, what about you?
I used to be a lawyer, and I never tell anybody that. Junie must be dying.
I can't believe it.
Because I don't know what to say, so I'm going to say the truth. So I used to be a lawyer, and then one day I was just I was a TV baby. I watched a lot of TV, and so I wasn't lawyering, and I was hanging out, and my husband, who can't stand TV, was like, you watch so much TV. You watch so much. why don't you just go get a job in TV? And I said, okay, I'm going to. And I did.
As easy as that.
That's it. It was as easy as that.
Junie, were you also a lawyer? in the
No, I
previous life?
wasn't. And when Libby and I started working together, I did not know for 5 years that she had been a lawyer. And some agent said, oh, is that Libby Goldstein who used to be a lawyer? I said, no. She wasn't a lawyer. She taught for a little bit, but she wasn't a lawyer.
And then Junie said to me, are you a lawyer? And I said, no. Who said that? So yes, that's all true.
Libby didn't think anybody would hire her if they knew she was a lawyer, which might be.
Right.
Yeah, back in the, anyway, I kind of fell into it too. I had a brother who was a TV director, and I was like his, and this is back in the day when you used to go all over the country, like on location doing stuff. And he'd do big miniseries and stuff, and I was his assistant, and I would always help with the local casting, like setting up these, and that really my whole entree into casting was doing local casting. And that's back in the day when casting directors would go on location and cast. And Jackie Birch had cast a movie for my brother, and she was in Florida and she needed somebody to help her. And I started helping her, and she was so encouraging and thought I had great taste. And because I was like, how are we going to know if they're any good? And she goes, you'll know. And that kind of started. And so from doing that type of casting, which was really, really, really good training, because you're judging people not on their resume, not on who their agent is, not on anything. You're just seeing, in some of these places, you're seeing like 400 people a day, because you'd go into like, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and need to look at cowboys, and you set this up. And sometimes out of these 400 people sessions, you'd find like 15 people. Anyway, and then from that, I wanted to get into real cat, and I started working. Yeah, I started working here in town, and I loved it.
Awesome. What do you guys think is the biggest misconception about your job? Margie, let's start with you.
I think the biggest misconception is that we don't make choices. I'm gonna throw a few out here that we don't make choices, and that all we do is that they don't understand how much we do that has to do with the whole. In a weird way, it's almost like what Skye was talking about, because I think in her world, it's so much, you're almost writing the show as you're casting the show. But those of us who work in scripted work are also helping to create the universe. And I think people think we just bring in 5 or 6 people and somebody else picks those people, and that's the end of our job. And it's a lot of other stuff too. And creating the whole, having the overview.
I think also people think, I've read where it's like, oh, they have the same list, they go to the same list, they use the same people, they only use their favorite agents. There's nobody I won't talk to. I don't think they understand how thorough we are, how much we approach each thing as its own animal, and everything is different. And the same people don't apply. You can't possibly have a career if that's how you work. It's definitely, they don't really understand the full scope, I think, of what we do. And the fact that so much of what we do is creative. And then we have to turn around and have business minds that can create a budget and make deals and know every single rule at SAG. And, there's so much to it that makes it, I think, way more involved and interesting than a lot of people kind of understand.
Right. Yeah. Like the thing, like, oh, you bring people in and like the director picks like one out of the lineup.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Skye, what about you from your end, unscripted?
Yeah, I mean, just like everyone else has said here, it's much bigger than you think. It really is like contracts and like scheduling, and then like your natural instincts. I mean, with the challenge, we really see the show as a place where the intersection of society is being shown, like how do people collaborate, like how do they live and work together with different sexual orientations, religions, race, gender, ethnicities. And it's really rare to see that in unscripted programming like we do on the challenge, because often a lot of these shows are down sort of racial or gender lines. And the challenge is really a trailblazer in that regard. And these are all things like we are considering, we can't just have a sea of the same looking people, a sea of the same, people with the same backgrounds, like it's a giant puzzle and everything sort of ticks off from everybody else. So you know, obviously it's a little different to what most of the ladies here on this panel deal with, but we have a giant jigsaw that really has to make sense at the end. And all we really have is our cast, you know, without our amazing cast, like they're playing a really intense game, obviously, but they need to turn up and be the show. And that's, you know, starts and ends with, you know, our department.
Yeah, and then this like their personalities is what the fans are responding to as well. And
Right,
like,
who they actually are. You know, it's a big part of my job is like any moment that I'm like, this person's not being authentic or they're self-editing themselves and that's what they're going to do when they get out there, I'm just allergic. And they're sort of a cross for me because I'm like, the audience is too smart now. Like we can't underestimate how clever they are, how they can see through all the BS. And that is, you know, something I'm like finely tuning myself so that at the moment I sort of sense that I'm like, okay, bye.
See you next time.
Yeah.
Aisha, what about you?
I think it's the idea that like with actors, I'm on your side. I want you to get the job. If you don't get this job, it's been really great meeting you for other things that we're working on and for other jobs. So it's always important, it's always relevant. And I'm sort of not here to judge you. I think that people might think you know, casting directors have some kind of complex that we're going around making these decisions and think we enjoy it. It's not. It's always the material is leading who we cast, not a personal preference. And every meeting is sort of never a wasted opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess there's kind of that like stereotype or joke that like, oh, the casting director hates me because I didn't get the part, or they never cast me in anything. But Junie, what about you?
Well, I guess it depends on when you say misconception about casting, if you're talking about misconception within our business or from the outside world, because I was going to say, before Margie said hers, I was going to say the complete opposite. I think the misconception is that we have a lot of power and that it's glamorous. And number one, it's not glamorous. It's real work. It's real work. And I love it. And I think we do have power and influence and all that, but is so inherently collaborative. And that changes, the degree of that changes from project to project, depending on producers, writers, studio network. But so it's a mixture of actually having a tremendous amount of influence and not ultimate power, but no one has ultimate power in the creative in a collaborative creative medium. I think. I mean, I'm not complaining about it. I think we're lucky to be in this field.
Yeah, because you all like wait. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's, you know, it's kind of like what Aisha was saying, that it is the material that ultimately drives it. But I think that we have, it isn't just bringing in bodies to the room, which is what I feel like the outside world's idea is, that we're somehow, you know, like HR, and you're looking at the resume and it doesn't matter, you know, how good someone is if they don't have the credits, and that's crap, because if someone's great, we don't care if they have the credits, you know, we care if they serve the role and serve the need of the project, and
you'll fight for them.
And we'll fight like hell. And that's the other thing. I think people think we say no, as someone was saying, that we're the people there crossing our arms and saying no. That's the other kind of TV version of, you know, when they do the movie, there's always a casting director with a grim look on their face sitting there saying no. And, you know, it's quite the opposite. You know, we're in there giving people a chance, you know, telling them to change their clothes so they'll look great for the thing, you know, giving them tips, giving them, you know, we're helping and encouraging. We want everybody to get the role, because then we can get on to the next role, right?
For sure. Libby, what about you?
I think, you know, nowadays there's so many people involved as opposed to, you know, 15 years ago, that there's a lot of management going on. Like you're a shrink, you're a lawyer, you're an accountant, you know, and you're a creative person and you wear a lot of hats. And I think you have to wrangle people, which takes, I think it's for Junie and I, it's fun because we have each other. And so, you know, we can be good cop, bad cop, whatever needs to be. But it is a lot of, there's a lot of emotional wrangling to get something done these days. And so there's, management. I don't think people realize, that how many people are involved in a decision and how long it takes us, and it's really on us to get everyone on the same page and on the right page.
Definitely. Unfortunately, we have to wrap, but it was great speaking with all of you. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day, you guys. Thank you so
too.
much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.